Okay, we are recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. As always, our guest today leads Greenpeace Canada's nature and food campaign, whose purpose is to maintain life on Earth in all its diversity. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please like and share. As always, our sponsor today is the Marine Mammal Rescue at Vancouver Aquarium. But without further ado, Shane Moffat, how are you doing today, my dude?
Good. It's great to be here. Yeah. Delighted to talk to you.
Thanks so much for being on the show. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks, Shane. Really appreciate it. So you're coming in from Toronto today. We're out in Vancouver, and we're getting hit by another one of these freaking atmospheric rivers, which I never heard that term before until this year. And it used to be Pineapple Express, I think, but then that got taken by a weed brand or something. So, so now it's a atmospheric river, and it's just one thing after another. It's crazy. But I will go down that segue in a little bit. But
Sure.
at the very beginning of every show, what we do is something we call two truths and a lie, or multiple lies, or multiple truths. We'll just Devin and I, because Shane has sent us a few points here, and we're gonna have to guess which is the lie. Hey, Dev.
Beautiful. Let's do it.
Okay, you ready? Number one. Okay, number one. I love spending time in nature. I just can't do without it. Okay, well, that
makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, for us anyway here. Yeah. Number two. I have been working in environmental justice and human rights advocacy for over 15 years. So that's good. Now, see, sometimes the guests put in, the years, right? 15 years is what we've got the number here. Okay. Number three, cooking grounds me, but I can't deal with mushrooms. That's possible.
Interesting.
A lot of people don't like, I love mushrooms, but a lot of people don't like mushrooms. I got another one here. I'm originally from Ireland, but I don't like Guinness.
Oh,
now, is that even possible? Is that even possible? I don't know. And then last but not least, I love going to my favorite Bay Street Cafe for soy lattes. Soy lattes are huge though. Soy or oat lattes and all that.
Right.
So what are you thinking?
Okay, so let's go. So nature loves it. Been working in environmental justice for 15 years. Yeah, makes sense. What was it? Doesn't cook with mushroom, doesn't like mushrooms, doesn't like Guinness, likes his lattes. You know what? I'm gonna go with there's two sneaky weasels in here.
Yeah.
I think you like mushrooms and I think you like Guinness, but I don't know. That's what I'm going with. What do you think, Nige?
Yeah, I think the lie is the mushrooms. I think the mushrooms. I think he actually does like mushrooms.
He does like mushrooms. All right. How do we do?
Yeah, Shane. So what's the?
Well, I love Guinness, that's for sure.
Yeah. There you go. Oh no.
It's funny. We're just slowly inching back into the bars and restaurants here in Toronto as well. So I think I had my first Guinness in a pub in about 2 years, about a week ago. So it's fresh in my mind. But no, I don't spend a lot of time on Bay Street, despite living in Toronto these days, and I tend to avoid the soy lattes on Bay Street.
That's funny. Oh, that's good. Oh man, that's funny that you say the Guinness, because we, Devin and I, we did a fundraiser sleep out last weekend for Covenant House here in Vancouver for at-risk youth, and we were sleeping outside with and all the guys that were there that we were with, they're all Irish. It was funny. So the group that we got was these Irish guys. We were talking about Guinness and stuff. And so what did I do? I came home. I hadn't slept. Like I got maybe 40 minutes of sleep, came home, and then I found a Guinness. I had to have a Guinness. It was just magic. And then I had my little nap. And
you found your emergency Guinness? What was that?
Yeah. Well, I think I was with you in the liquor store. There was a couple of Guinnesses there. I remember I picked up those couple.
The emergency one.
The emergency Guinness.
Break the glass if you need a Guinness.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually worked in the Guinness brewery, but it feels like a lifetime ago.
No kidding.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, gosh, that must be pushing 20 years ago now, I think.
Wow.
Good times.
Yeah.
That's a blessing and a curse, I think, probably.
Yeah, it certainly gave me an ability to pour pints very, very quickly.
So I'm just gonna. There's a statement that you guys sent over, and it's quite it's quite impactful. I'm just going to read it here about, so this is from Greenpeace. Our statement from Greenpeace International is COP26 is more than expected, but less than we hoped. So can you kind of wrap up a little bit around that there? What that may mean for our listeners?
For sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess one of our challenges as environmentalists, and not just environmentalists, I think a lot of people is maintaining hope, you know, kind of maintaining hope that we still have time to, you know, to do what we need to do to protect the earth for future generations. And I think in that spirit, kind of, we went to the COP hoping that we would get a deal that is going to, you know, solve a significant number of the climate challenges facing us right now. Yeah. So we didn't get that, but we did get a few things to build on, you know. And I think what we got to build on was the pledges to end fossil fuel subsidies. That's really helpful. We got a commitment from parties to come back again next year to get emissions down in line with what will keep us within 1.5 degrees. Yeah. That's helpful. What we didn't get was a commitment to keep us within 1.5 degrees. So we don't have the details of that plan yet. And I think a big shortcoming in the COP this year was not getting the necessary funding for the most climate vulnerable and developing nations around the world to actually themselves mitigate and adapt to climate change. That's essential from a global justice and effective action perspective. So that's some of the good and the bad that we saw. We still have reason, I think, a lot of reason to hope, and I think a lot of the solidarity we saw at the COP was really excellent. But we didn't get enough, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then in the last minute we had India and China both kind of step in and go, "Hey guys, we're going to change some wording." It was about coal, right? About and it was just a bit of a I don't know if it was a bit of a slap, but a bit of a real sting at the very end there.
I mean, those kind of shenanigans are almost inevitable when you have oil lobby delegations that are, I think, if I'm getting me facts right here, and I think I am, the oil lobby would have been the largest of all kind of national delegations, would have been bigger than the largest national delegation, you know. So when you have that concentration of oil lobbyists and excuse me, not just oil lobbyists, but fossil fuel lobbyists across the board, those kind of shenanigans are unfortunately what you get at the end. You have that kind of representation, those kind of voices at the COP, you know. So it's unfortunate, but
yeah. So do you know, I don't know if you know or not, like what would be the oil law like in Canada here, like the you know, the subsidies and whatnot that was going into the oil industry in Canada? I have no idea. I'm just I
have to say I don't know off the top of my head. I wouldn't like to speculate, but very significant, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the so these pledges that countries have made, you know, how much teeth do you think they really have? Like, is it really, and I know, I mean, you go back to the Paris Agreement, and now you got COP20. It just seems that it's things are really gaining momentum. I mean, on the positive side of things, in people's awareness. But you know, how much teeth does this stuff have? I mean, I know we're seeing, I mean, like I'm sitting here in Vancouver and we have another atmospheric river hitting us, you know, right now. We had massive flooding, which we've never, ever had. I mean, in 100 plus years, you know, highways have been wiped out. You know, farmers, you know, 40,000 of his chickens were completely, I mean, it's just one thing after another. And we have another one hitting us now. So how much teeth do you think that, you know, these pledges have, you know, with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to say first off, like the scale of the human tragedy out in BC right now, and that the COP would end, and instead of kind of coming back, what do we do next steps on the COP?
Yes.
Poor British Columbia, not for the first time, I don't need to tell you, in recent years, hit by these climate-driven disasters. It's pretty devastating stuff, you know. Even from where I'm sitting here, I know I'm talking with a lot of people who are our hearts go out to folks in BC right now.
Yeah.
And certainly as part of that, I think there's important conversations happening about the role of the forest in BC in preventing floods, and I think I'd love to get into that a bit more for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But to answer your question though, on like the sincerity of some of the commitments, I think we saw a few side deals. Like there was a leaders pledge to end deforestation. There was a leaders pledge to kind of reduce methane emissions. And unfortunately, I'd say those pledges, some of those side deals, it's not looking like they're worth the paper they're written on. At least so far. And I think the pledge to end deforestation globally is a bit of a case in point on that.
Yeah.
What we've learned. So please go on. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Yeah. So what you've learned.
Yeah, I mean, we've been really looking into that over the past couple of weeks. And what we've just learned in the past week is that while the authoritarian president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, was at the COP, he was actually keeping from public scrutiny the fact that deforestation in the Amazon is now at its highest rate in 15 years. And he signed that deforestation pledge. So kind of off the bat, you're kind of thinking, wow, listen, if this guy is in a hurry to sign this deforestation pledge, and deforestation is, at dangerous levels in the Amazon right now, what does that say for the sincerity of the commitment? On the other hand, the Canadian government is actually pursuing a deal at the same time with Brazil, under the Canada-Mercosur free trade agreement, and also was a signatory to that pledge to end deforestation. But what that deal will actually do is it'll bring almost $2 billion worth of meat from Brazil, which is the largest driver of deforestation in the Amazon, through livestock and cattle ranching, clear the forest, bring in the livestock. And so to sign that deal and to be simultaneously negotiating a deal in Amazon destruction at the same time, it's just totally inconsistent, So, it's seeming like that pledge to end deforestation will be one of the biggest flops of the COP. And I think it's a good example of why many activists have been very frustrated with some of the nice words. And as Greta Thunberg was saying, the blah, blah, blah versus versus real action. So that's frustrating to see.
Yeah, I've actually spent quite a lot of time in Brazil over the years, and also in the Amazon, in the rainforest. With actually, Devin was there with me in Ecuador, where we spent time with the Achuar tribe. We went down with a group called the Pachamama Alliance out of San Francisco, and Lynn Twist, incredible lady that's become a good friend of ours, and just spending time like in the Amazon. And we basically flew out of in a Cessna. Our family, five of us, crammed into a Cessna with a pilot, and we flew into a dirt runway, and we took canoes, and we went and we stayed with the Achuar people. And to be able to fly over, I was blown away, lifting off of the runway and flying for about an hour and a half, 90 minutes over untouched, pristine rainforest of the Amazon. No human, nothing, no infrastructure, no anything. Until we were and then being with the tribe, the Achuar, who were living in complete harmony and balance, and they say that they're the guardians of the rainforest, right? And to be able to spend time with them, and everything there is in complete and utter balance. I said yesterday, we had an interview yesterday with the Wilderness Committee, and I said we were in the Amazon, and I thought, I'm taking bug spray, I'm wearing the mosquito nets. No, didn't need it. Like everything was in balance. Like there was a few mosquitoes, but it wasn't inundated with mosquitoes. Everything was perfect. Now, and then to be in Brazil and just see what's been going on with the rainforest of the Amazon in Brazil, it's just absolutely horrific. And I know Devin and I and our family, we driving through the mountains of Ecuador, and beautiful rainforest, and then so many parts of it, swaths, were taken out for the sole purpose of cattle, raising cattle, right? And then exporting cattle to Canada or wherever it's going to go. But in Canada here, So what is it, like a definition of deforestation? I heard yesterday that there's a definition here in Canada, but it's actually abided by, like, by the federal area, and then the other areas are open for cutting down the lumber. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on here in Canada?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. You know, and I think there's a lot of I guess I don't think it's completely necessary kind of quibbling about
Yeah.
what is deforestation versus what is clear cut logging versus what is forest degradation, which we see a lot of in Canada. I'll break them down a little bit for you. It's fairly straightforward stuff. Like deforestation is when you're clearing an area of rainforest generally, and you're converting the use of that land area from rainforest into some other land usage, whether that's livestock, palm oil production, rubber plantations. So actually changing, you're saying this is no longer going to be a forest. It's now going to be deforested and converted into another land use.
Got it. So that's the definition of deforestation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So
excellent.
So if you take a look at, say, the Canadian boreal forest, where there's some very destructive clear-cut logging happening, for example, it's not technically deforestation.
Right.
But what comes along with that, with a lot of the clear-cut logging, like you have in British Columbia as well, you have species habitat destroyed, you have vast amounts of carbon released, you have similar but distinct issues in terms of Indigenous cultural landscapes being harmed, Indigenous peoples being excluded from the decision-making in their territories. You have water quality significantly deteriorates in those kind of clear-cut logging. So you have many of the same environmental impacts that go along with deforestation when you see clear-cut logging in Canada, but it's not technically deforestation. I think what the logging industry in Canada in particular is quite sophisticated at saying is, in Canada, our logging is great because we don't do deforestation. But in saying that, they're actually masking over the fact that you're doing a huge amount of harm right across Canada's forest, which is one of the most represented ecosystems right across the country. You're holding back protection of the forest from British Columbia to Ontario to Quebec, holding back really urgent protections and forest restoration projects. And that has serious social consequences, from floods to climate change to biodiversity loss to Indigenous peoples' rights being violated. So they do a good job at kind of saying to the Canadian public and to the rest of the world, we don't do deforestation. We get it right in Canada. Well, actually, you don't. And your logging in Canada is a big part of the reason we're in a climate and biodiversity crisis.
Yeah. No, I read something recently that the Amazon, the lungs of the earth, that's what it's been referred to as, but our northern rainforests, the old growth were able to take more carbon or CO2 carbon out of the atmosphere than even like the Amazon. And I don't know if that's true, but the amount that they're able to draw is massive, and we're cutting down these old growth trees. Our lungs, we're basically stripping our own lungs, and it just blows my mind. And we talk about deforestation and then replanting and blah blah blah. I spent a lot of time in the bush. I'm hiking, mountain biking, whatever. And even in Lynn Valley here. So in Lynn Valley, North Vancouver was in the major logging industry 100 years ago. So major logging, they brought it all down. They shipped the logs wherever they were going, and they replanted. Great, they replanted. But I spent a lot of time in the replanted second growth forest here, and I actually call it Mordor, because I ride my bike up here behind the house, and there's a few old growth trees that are still knocking around, but most of it is second growth. You have the second growth, and you have all this spindly ground covering and the trees are so close together, the light isn't coming through, so you really don't have a healthy regenerative environment that you would have with an original old growth or an old growth type forest. And so I also spent a lot of time in some, because there's not that many left, up at Whistler and places like that, where you can get into these old growth forests. And it's a completely different environment. You have so much life. You have so many animals and mushrooms and, you know, everything's going on there. Just like my experience in the Amazon, you have that incredible balance. But in the replanted forests, it's not the same at all. Not even close. But like you said, we're replanting. We're taking them down. We're replanting. Yeah, it's.
I mean, some of those aren't even forests. You
No,
know,
they're not.
like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, like if you're just replanting you know, miles and miles of monocultures, that's not a forest.
Yeah, like palm oil in Malaysia. Like I spent a lot of
For
time there too,
example.
and it's just like as far as
Yeah.
you can see, it's palm oil. It's palm trees for palm oil, and there's nothing else growing below those trees.
Well, just like you said, it's palm trees. It's not a forest.
Exactly.
You don't have the animals living there. You don't have the same, like, there's plenty of scientific evidence that shows this. You don't have the same amount of freshwater storage. You don't have the carbon storage. Certainly
Exactly.
don't have the cultural values, both for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people.
Yeah.
You can't replant an old growth forest, you know. And I think like one of the big kind of promises Justin Trudeau made was around, oh, listen, I'm going to buy a pipeline and then I'm going to plant 2 billion trees. Well, actually, you'd be better off not buying that damn pipeline and restoring and protecting the old growth forest that remain.
Yeah.
So like that narrative around we can really easily replant what we destroy. I mean, we have to go beyond that kind of an attitude.
Exactly. I mean, you know, look what's going on out here on the West Coast in Fairy Creek, right? I mean, Devon's, you had a whole bunch of your crew up there, right? Camped out, your girlfriend and.
Yeah, they did. A bunch of the friends were up there.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's, you know, it's the old growth. It's the old growth that needs protecting. Cause like, you know, saying there, it's we're hurting ourselves. It's our lungs. It's not chopping it down, you know, for some lumber for a table or something, but it's, you know, we're chopping down our lungs, you know, it's,
and they represent so much more to us. You know, they represent so much more to the earth. They represent so much more to us as people. You know, when I think of the forest, I was talking with a wonderful woman a few years back, north of where you guys are, quite a ways north, and she does a lot of work on non-timber forest products. I think is the kind of one of the more technical terms. Basically, she collects a lot of food from the forest. You know, sells that. Blueberries are big business, for example.
Yeah.
But I think the logging industry has too much influence and are kind of distorting the perception of what the intrinsic value of forests and nature are. And I think during COVID, people have been really kind of getting back to that intrinsic value.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Our executive director here, she's for years and years been challenging, I think, the environmental movement to go beyond, you know, how do you quantify like ecosystem services of the forest? How do you attach a dollar sign to all the benefits that the forest provide? And yeah, listen, frankly, the forests provide billions of dollars of flood control services, carbon sequestration services, you name it. They do provide all those things that you could put a dollar sign on. But at the end of the day, like, why would we put a dollar value on that? We can talk about the value that they provide us and their intrinsic value to us.
Yeah.
You know, culture, spiritually, socially, in terms of the fact that they actually keep life on Earth. Like, we don't need to put a dollar sign on that to actually say these forests matter, and they're not just valuable for the pulp and paper that they can produce and generate profits for a few shareholders.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of you know, it's kind of a microcosmos in the bigger fights that we're having all around the world.
Yeah. I mean, there is some crazy points. Like yesterday, I saw on the news there that we, you know, or NASA or somebody, SpaceX sent a rocket into space to test, to shooting at, you know, asteroids, just in case the big one comes hurling towards us again, to shoot this thing out of the air. You know, billions and billions, and I can't even imagine how much that would cost to do that, to send this out to blow up an asteroid or basically push it off course so it's not going to hit the Earth. And then we've got the, you know, Bezos and these guys flying and, you know, spending billions of dollars to go to space as a party. What's, you know, hey guys, what about, let's spend some money down here to help protect our lungs. Protect these old growth rainforests. Why rip it all apart so we can send people into space to shoot at asteroids? let's let's do something
It's
down
unbelievable
here,
stuff.
guys.
It's
I don't.
unbelievable
It
stuff.
just it's
Yeah,
mind-boggling. I mean, I agree that we got to go to space and we're humans and we got to keep exploring. No problem. But it's just, come on, let's spend something down here protecting our our lungs. And there's something that I don't understand. So so I think it was COP26 or back in Paris in 2015. There was an agreement by like 200 countries to allow countries to buy carbon credits, like offsets, and trade them. I'm like, and I don't quite understand this. Basically, well, I'm dirty, so I'm gonna buy credits off Switzerland because they're clean, and now I'm clean. It doesn't make freaking sense to me. Can you explain a little bit of what's going on with carbon credit trading?
It doesn't make sense to me either, right? So I can give it a go, and I think the nuts and bolts of it is that you have some of the biggest polluters on Earth, like Shell, for example.
Shell,
and they're claiming Chevron presumably are doing similar things. But what they'd like to claim is that essentially they can continue to produce fossil fuels, and we can continue to consume their fossil fuel products. And all we have to do essentially is to plant a few trees, and that's going to make up for these vast amount of emissions going into the atmosphere. And it's a really I guess worrying kind of piece of greenwash. And when I think about the challenges that we have over the next 10 years to actually meet our climate goals, one of the things I'm most worried about actually is that we're going to have this shell game where instead of actually reducing our emissions, instead of holding oil and gas companies accountable to massively reducing their emissions, shifting into cleaner technologies,
into renewables.
Instead of that, what they want to do is they want to start paying for a little bit of forest protection here, a little bit of forest protection there, when actually what we need to be doing urgently is reducing emissions and restoring nature at the same time. Not playing them off against each other and saying that the solution to climate change now is allowing oil companies to keep pumping out emissions, and because they have all this money that they've generated from their fossil fuel operations, to then be commodifying nature in a way that it continues to serve their narrow interests to keep emitting fossil fuels. That's completely wrong-headed. What we need to be doing is empowering Indigenous people to lead in their territories and their forests, massively investing in those communities from a rights, reconciliation, and decolonization perspective. That has to happen. And at the same time, we have to be reducing our emissions. We can't play them off each other. We can't say the price that we have to pay as humanity for protecting our forests is allowing the biggest polluters to keep on emitting. So basically, please go.
No, go ahead.
Just going to say it's one of the things that worries me most that could take us off track in the next 10 years because I think fossil fuel companies see this as a bit of an easy way out.
See, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's absolutely, it's ridiculous. And when you see the numbers and you talk about the 1.5 degrees, I mean, 1.5 degrees is still not, I mean, it's not good. I mean, it's something, even with 1.5 degrees, you're looking at what's happening now. I mean, we have these countries, they're lobbying at, the little island nations from the Maldives to wherever it is. They're not going to be there. They won't have a country. They'll be, one of the, so many of these the refugee issue globally because of climate change is horrific. And, everybody's going, people are coming north, and it's crazy. There's something that I was going to say about the big guys, oil companies and whatnot, mining companies. It's an interesting thing is that my wife and I, we go to something called the Pacific Salmon Foundation fundraiser here where they protect, Pacific salmon. And I've been a few times. It's a very massive gala. It's a pretty fancy, I feel uncomfortable there, but it's a fancy ball. But I noticed that they raise millions and millions of dollars to protect the salmon, which is great. But the sponsors of this on the wall and the guys doing the presentations are all the large mining companies. And I look at that and I go, This just doesn't make sense. You got the mining companies that are donating millions of dollars to help protect the salmon, but they're the guys that are polluting the rivers and and it's like it's just kind of washing their conscience clean. And and they make they donate a lot of money to protect the salmon, which is fabulous. But
But what's the trade?
they're the guys polluting the rivers.
Yeah, you know, it's
That's
listen, you know, I don't want to be too self-congratulatory of Greenpeace, but that's why we don't take corporate money.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Right. We don't take a cent in corporate money because they only have one agenda, and that agenda is to burnish their own credibility. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I was studying corporate law, but I have studied it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of legal precedent. And I think one of the kind of early legal precedents in terms of how corporations can spend their advertising dollars. There's a famous quote by a judge that says, it's not like there can't be cake, but there can't be cake for no benefit, right? So these companies, they have to be benefiting their reputation and their bottom lines by giving that kind of money.
Right.
So it doesn't come without a cost, you know. And I think just this week I saw that might have been last week. Is it Nespresso? Those folks that do those horrible,
with those little pod things.
Yeah. That's like,
I know.
You know, choking half the animals in the ocean and just driving climate change and everything else.
I know.
They gave something like $100,000 to Trees Canada or something like that. You know, it's like, listen, instead of giving a few $1,000s to Trees Canada, would you not stop making these bloody Nespresso capsules that are destroying all the biodiversity around us? You know, so like people are playing with our forests and the trees in a way that are like, it's kind of trying to pull the wool over our eyes, you know. That's why, like, we filed a complaint with the Federal Competition Bureau saying that Shell is advertising to drivers that they can drive carbon neutral using Shell's fossil fuels.
Is that right?
You know, because Shell's planting a few trees out in they're supporting a few kind of tree conservation projects. So it's right across the board. Like, I think, you know, it's right across the board, unfortunately.
Wow.
PR schemes.
Yeah.
From the beginning of time.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's from the beginning of time, actually. You're right. Yeah. It's as humans, it's crazy. So for people that want to help, I think you said something earlier where you talked about, you know, being in the forest and whatnot. For myself personally, you know, I had never been to the Amazon, you know, deep into the Amazon with an indigenous tribe before. But when we went, I really started to understand, because before it was just on the globe. I think it's here. Yeah, I think there, you know. And I had a life-changing experience deep in the Amazon with an indigenous tribe. It sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it's actually true. But the experience there for us people to experience rainforests, to actually get out there. And I think you had a good point during COVID. COVID was actually had its goods and its bad. I mean, it was a lot of people died, but a lot of people had a lot of shifts for the positive. There was a lot of ability for us to study within, like study ourselves and study what we're doing, and spend a lot of time out in nature. Because I would go, you know, I'd be out behind the house here, climbing up the mountain. I'd go out and usually I'd see one or two people, maybe maximum. Well, during COVID, in the middle on a Wednesday afternoon, I was out there. There was so many people using the hiking trails, people with babies in backpacks, all in the bush.
Some of my friends were doing that. I've seen some of the photos, I think, out in BC. Yeah.
It's crazy. I thought, this is crazy, but you're getting an appreciation for what nature really means to all of us, as opposed to sitting in our ivory towers, wherever, and I'm going to send a check to, you know, whatever it is, but, you know, getting out and experiencing it. So for people to get a taste and make change, I think we need to experience things. Experience is the best for us. But I've attended some of our MP meetings, you know, these gatherings of the MPs. Jonathan Wilkinson is our MP here in North Vancouver. He was actually the Federal Minister of Environment for Canada. He just changed hats. He's now Minister of Natural Resources, I think. So I went to one of his meetings, and what kind of choked me was I was, you know, I'm in my late 50s. So I was there, and it was mostly retirees. okay, retirees that were there, and maybe 4 or 5 students. And that was it. And he stood up in the front and he made a really good point. He said, we really want people to get involved in politics. If you want change, as opposed to standing out there with a placard protesting, which is fine, get involved in politics, get involved and make the change. And what really pissed me off was a bunch of old fogies like me. They're complaining about dog shit on the sidewalk, which makes me mad. I don't like dog shit on the sidewalk, but we weren't talking about the real issues. The real issues weren't getting addressed. And some of the students behind me that were from UBC, they were asking really good questions, but there was only 5 of them out of about 150 people. So in order for, I really see it for people, if we want to make change, we got to get involved. We've got to get involved, but we've got to feel, we got to get into nature. We got to appreciate nature. We got to see what it means to us and have that light bulb or that feeling or whatever it go off. And as Devin said yesterday in an interview that, Indigenous cultures look 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. We got to really start thinking that even 3 come on, guys, let's think 3 generations forward or something, because what's going on is it's not sustainable. And, talking about another mass extinction, I don't know. I don't want to think that, but, yeah. Dev, did you have any questions there? Just kind of rambling on a bit there.
No, I'm just sitting here
usually
taking it all in. No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Listen to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, you go ahead.
You're dead right. Like, I've been in Canada, gosh, I think it's pushing 12 years now, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't even begin to describe the profound wisdom that Indigenous people in Canada have to offer to all of us when we think of how we're going to get out of this mess. And while you're kind of talking there about like the different ways we can get involved locally, I was thinking about my own experience during COVID, which is just spending every kind of weekend I possibly could in the trails and the parks around the Greenbelt here, just around Southern Ontario. And I was visiting just the local park here, and I was stunned to see a snapping turtle just hanging out in downtown Toronto. Right? And I walked about a half a mile up the Humber River where I'd seen this turtle, and I came across some art by some local First Nation artists, and they'd done an incredible job telling the story of that particular place over the past 10,000 odd years, and they had depicted the people traveling to this place. They had depicted some of the animals that used to be here, some animals that are here now. And so I'd seen on the one hand this incredible snapping turtle that looked like some sort of a prehistoric monster in downtown Toronto. And then I saw these Indigenous artists depicting how snapping turtles had always been part of this landscape. Yeah, and should always be part of this landscape. So I was seeing it in real life. I was seeing it artistically depicted. And for me, that was a very profound moment of just thinking, we all deserve to have nature in some form in our lives all around us, whether you're living in the city, whether you're living in the country. And I think that we all have a right to that. One of my colleagues here, our director of diversity and inclusion, she wrote a fantastic piece on the importance of all communities in cities having kind of access to nature. And I think that's a big part of the puzzle here as well. When you look at who has access to nature, when you look at who has access to trees when you're living in cities, it's very some stark disparities, but racial disparities between who has access to nature in the city, who has access to shade and that comes to trees in the scorching summer, for example. So I think right across the board, we all have a right to be experiencing nature in our lives, and I think that gets people very. It touches people very profoundly, and I think it gets people more motivated to act to protect what they love.
And I love what you're saying about the rights, and what you guys are doing. I mean, what Greenpeace has done. I mean, Greenpeace was actually founded in Vancouver. It's so many years ago, right? And but the rights of nature, you guys are protecting the rights of nature, because nature has rights. nature actually has rights. And we do some work with the Pachamama Alliance out of San Francisco, and they helped draft in Ecuador a bill to actually give nature rights.
Oh yeah,
And
I saw that.
nature has rights, and nature should have rights. And it's just, it's just crazy that we would think that nature wouldn't have rights, because it does have the right. It has the right to exist. It has the right to, yeah. So what you guys are doing has been giving, helping, protect the rights for nature for so long. So we thank you. Yeah, pretty wild history Greenpeace has had over the over the years.
We've had our ups or downs,
Paul Watson
words.
back in
Yeah,
the
right.
in the early days there, right? And now I guess he's Sea Shepherd, right? I think he's
Right,
got Sea Shepherd, and yeah, absolutely incredible. And just another little. I mean, I did talk about it the other day with the Wilderness Committee. Was that my wife and I in 1989? We got married in '89, and we did our honeymoon in Haida Gwaii. So it was called the Queen Charlotte Islands, and now it's Haida Gwaii, back to its original name. And very, very remote, camping on the beaches. So we had our little car, and we mountain bikes, and we stayed, and amazing. And the Indigenous culture and community was so strong there. And then, like you said, the stories and the paintings of the rivers full of salmon. And we saw that. We did see that, actually. We did see the rivers were full of salmon. We were there, I think, in October or something, and it was full of salmon. But the one thing that shocked me in 1989 is we went to, I think, it's South Moresby Island, which old growth, legend old growth forest. We went, and we got there, and it was beautiful, massive old growth trees, but it was just a facade. We drove past this, and I saw smoke on the other side of the trees. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And went through, and it was just, as far as you could see, slash burning. All the growth has been logged, and they were just slash burning. And it was like, oh my God, it was just a facade. This has been going on behind closed doors, the facade of the trees.
Yeah.
And all the old growth was gone. And it was just, that was in 1989. That was 30 something years ago. And it's shocking, because I fly to Asia quite a bit. And, you fly up the coast of BC, and you look down, you see the tapestry of all the areas that have been logged. And then you have these spindly little, things that are trying to regrow. And it's shocking, because people think of British Columbia as the old Monty Python, the lumberjack. Lumberjacks of the, but it's a lot of it has been logged, and it's our lungs again. So
I had to share
it's crazy. Yeah,
I mean, it's unreal stuff, like kind of that. I've seen it up in the Boreal Forest as well. You drive along miles and miles and miles. You're driving along, you think you're in the middle of some of the most majestic forests on earth.
That's
you step out to have you step out for a break, and you're suddenly in the middle of clear cuts once you go a couple of feet in.
I know. So well, thanks so much for what you're doing. And any I guess we'll probably wrap her up. We're almost come up to close to an hour here, I guess.
Oh geez, time's flying.
I know, time's flying when you're out. I should have had a pint of Guinness. We're still a bit early here on the West Coast, though. Well, no, never too early. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, it's definitely it's not too early for me anyway. We can agree that.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. Dev, any
no, pretty much
questions
good.
for Shane?
Thank you so much for coming to the show. It was awesome listening to you. You're a well of knowledge, and we got to definitely get this one out there, and people will be switch the mindsets, you know what I mean? So thank you so much, guys. If you want to know more about Shane, we'll put links in the description, everything that he's got going on. Like and subscribe as always. But other than that, do you have any last thoughts for us? And thank you so much for coming on the show today, man.
No, I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you guys. I just say to people, I think there is a reason for optimism. I think finally over the past couple of years, we're making progress. I think we're breaking through, and I think people are getting mobilized. They're seeing how we're being misled by a lot of corporations, and our governments aren't acting, and that's causing people. One of the positive things is causing people to come together and to work together more. Yes. And I think we really saw that at the COP, and I hope that we can see that continuing from the COP, because at the end of the day, it's going to be people power that fixes this climate crisis, and that does give me a bit of hope, despite all the problems that we were talking about on the podcast just now.
Yeah. No, I also see I see a lot of positive things happening, especially with the younger people like you guys. and the turnout for COP, and then people like Greta Thunberg and all it's really, I think we've finally been given a good shake, and now people are waking up. We're waking up to it. It's taken a heck of a long time, and everything always does, but there's a lot of really positive things happening and positive movements, and it's just changing. A good friend of ours, Lynn Twist, says we need to change the dream of the modern world. And the dream and the materialistic, way that we've evolved, we need to change our dream. And that's what the Oshuar are saying from deep in the Amazon rainforest. They're telling us, guys, go back and help change the dream of your modern world. And that's actually what's happening. And it's slow, but it's getting so much momentum. It's really starting to spin up. So, and yeah, so I'm thanking you. I mean, our generation, unfortunately, we ruined it. We were ignorant as heck, and you guys are awake and making massive change. So I just want to say thank you to all you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Much appreciated. Really, really.
Yeah,
that means a lot. Yeah, it does mean a lot.
It means a lot to all us old fogies. So, yeah, we fucked it all up, and yeah.
You were duped. I wouldn't blame yourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Shane. Thanks so much.